I'll make sure they never believe you, my ex-wife hissed at me outside the courtroom. You'll be paying child support until they're 30, and they'll grow up thinking their father abandoned them. She had no idea I had recordings of every threat, therapy notes documenting her manipulation, and school reports showing how my children changed when she poisoned them against me. 3 months later, when I calmly placed that evidence before the judge, her face crumbled as she realized she'd just lost the war she thought she was winning. It wasn't supposed to end like this. 5 years earlier, Sarah and I were celebrating our 10th anniversary at the Italian restaurant where we had our first date. I remember how the candlelight caught in her hair as she smiled across the table, the same smile that had made me fall for her all those years ago. Our 2 children, Emma, 9, and Noah, 7, were at home with Sarah's mother for the night. To us, I said, raising my glass of wine, and to many more. Sarah clinked her glass against mine, but something felt off. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. She'd been distant lately, working late, guarding her phone, disappearing for hours on weekends with vague explanations. I had chalked it up to stress from her promotion, but sitting across from her that night, I felt the first real tremor of doubt. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Perfect," she replied, too quickly. "Just tired from work." A month later, I found out what was really happening when I accidentally saw a text message pop up on her phone while it was charging. "Miss you already. Can't wait until he's out of the picture." The divorce papers arrived 2 weeks later, delivered by a courier while I was helping Noah with his math homework at the kitchen table. Sarah wasn't even home. She'd made sure to be at work when they arrived. "What's that, Dad?" Noah asked, pointing at the thick envelope. "Just some boring grown-up stuff," I said, trying to keep my voice steady while my world collapsed. "Let's figure out these fractions." That night, after the kids were asleep, Sarah finally came home. I was sitting at the kitchen table, the papers spread out before me, a half-empty glass of whiskey in my hand. I'm not a drinker, but that night called for something stronger than coffee. "Were you planning to mention this?" I asked quietly. She set her purse down with deliberate slowness. There was no guilt on her face, no shame, just cold determination. "I was going to tell you tonight. It's better this way, Mark. We both know it's been over for a while." "Both know? This is the first I'm hearing of it." I gestured at the papers. "And what's this about sole custody?" Her eyes hardened. "I'm their mother. They need stability during this transition." "Stability? I've been just as involved in their lives as you have. More, lately." "The courts favour mothers," she said with a shrug. "My lawyer says it's pretty much guaranteed, especially since I'm willing to let you have visitation." Let me have visitation with my own children? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Sarah, we can work this out reasonably. Shared custody. We both love Emma and Noah." "We'll see what the judge says," she replied, walking out of the kitchen. "I'm staying at my sister's tonight. I'll be back tomorrow to pack some things." I sat there for hours after she left, trying to understand how the woman I'd built a life with could turn so cold, so calculating. The whiskey remained untouched. I needed a clear head now, more than ever. What I didn't realize then was that Sarah had been planning this for months. She had been systematically building a case, telling friends and family that I was emotionally distant, that I worked too much, that I wasn't involved with the children. None of it was true, but she was laying groundwork. The next few weeks were a blur of lawyer consultations, paperwork, and trying to maintain normalcy for Emma and Noah. I moved into the guest room, and we established an uneasy coexistence until custody arrangements could be formalized. I noticed Sarah was suddenly spending more time with the kids, making a show of being supermom, something she hadn't done in years. Then came the first weekend the children were supposed to stay with me in my new apartment. I had everything ready, their favourite snacks, new bedding for their rooms, board games we loved playing together. I was at Sarah's house, our old house, at the agreed time, but no one answered the door. I called Sarah's cell. No answer. I called the house phone. Nothing. Finally, after an hour of waiting, my phone buzzed with a text from Sarah. "Kids aren't feeling well. Better reschedule." I drove to my empty apartment and sat on Emma's new bed, staring at the unicorn comforter I'd picked out because it matched the one she had at home. The silence was deafening. The next day I saw pictures on Facebook of Sarah and the kids at the zoo, all smiles. They looked perfectly healthy. This became a pattern. Every scheduled visit had a last-minute cancellation. Someone was sick, there was a birthday party they couldn't miss. A school project needed finishing. When I did get time with them, they were withdrawn, uncomfortable. Emma wouldn't meet my eyes. Noah barely spoke. During one rare visit, as we sat eating pizza that neither child seemed interested in, Emma finally spoke up. "Dad, why did you leave us?" The question hit me like a physical blow. Emma, I didn't leave you. I would never leave you or Noah. Your mum and I are separating, but I'm still your dad, and I still love you both more than anything. But Mom said you wanted to start a new life without us. That's why you moved out. I set my pizza down, suddenly unable to swallow. That's not true, honey. Not at all. I moved out because Mom and I decided to live in different houses, but I wanted you both to live with me half the time. Noah looked up then. Mom says you don't really want us around. That's why you're always cancelling our weekends. I felt sick. Noah, I've never cancelled a single weekend. Not one. Both children looked confused, and then Emma's face closed off. Mom says you'd say that. She says you lie a lot. That night, after dropping the kids back at Sarah's, I sat in my car and cried for the first time since this nightmare began. She wasn't just taking them from me physically. She was poisoning their minds against me. Parental alienation. I'd read about it, but never imagined I'd be experiencing it. The next morning, I called my lawyer and explained what was happening. He sighed heavily. Unfortunately, Mark, this is common, and it's hard to prove in court without documentation. Start keeping a journal of every interaction, every cancelled visit, every conversation with the kids. Record phone calls if your state allows it. We need evidence. So I did. I created a detailed log of every scheduled visit and how Sarah interfered. I saved every text message, every email. I recorded our phone conversations where she made excuses for keeping the children from me. I even started recording the drop-offs and pickups on my phone, capturing her coldness, her subtle manipulations, the way she would whisper things to the children just before sending them to me. Meanwhile, the temporary child support payments were bleeding me dry. Sarah had quit her job shortly after filing for divorce, claiming she needed to be there for the children during this difficult time. The court ordered support based on her having no income and me having full-time employment. Between rent on my apartment, the mortgage on the house where Sarah and the kids still lived, and the support payments, I was working overtime just to stay afloat. 3 months into this nightmare, I had my first small victory. The court ordered a specific visitation schedule that Sarah couldn't easily manipulate. She was furious. "This doesn't change anything," she told me during a drop-off, smiling sweetly for anyone who might be watching, but speaking through gritted teeth. "They still don't want to be with you. I'm just following the court order." "That's all I'm asking for, Sarah," I replied calmly, though my heart was pounding. "Just follow the court's orders." "For now," she said with a smirk. "But when we get to the final custody hearing, you'll see who wins." That's when I realized this wasn't about the children at all. This was about winning, about control, about punishing me. With the regular visitation schedule in place, I finally had consistent time with Emma and Noah. It was awkward at first. They were reluctant, distant, parroting phrases that clearly came from their mother. "We're only here because we have to be. Mom says you're trying to turn us against her. Mom cries every time we have to come see you." I didn't argue or badmouth Sarah. Instead, I focused on rebuilding our relationship. We played games they used to love. I helped with homework. I took an interest in their new hobbies and friends. Slowly, so slowly, they began to relax around me again. One breakthrough came when Noah had a nightmare during an overnight stay. He came into my room crying, half asleep, and instinctively climbed into my arms the way he used to. I held him until he fell back asleep, and in the morning, he didn't pull away when I made breakfast. Small victories. But for every step forward, Sarah engineered 2 steps back. She'd schedule exciting activities during my time, then make a show of reluctantly cancelling them when the kids had to come to me. She'd call multiple times during visits, asking if they were okay, if they wanted to come home early. She started taking them to a therapist who, I later discovered, was being fed a steady diet of lies about me. The most painful moment came 6 months in, when Emma's school called me about her declining grades and increasing anxiety. I was still listed as an emergency contact, and the school counsellor wanted to speak with both parents. "Emma's teacher is concerned," the counsellor explained when Sarah and I sat stiffly in her office. Emma was a straight A student, but she's falling behind. More concerning is her emotional state. She seems constantly anxious, especially around custody transitions. "It's the divorce," Sarah said quickly, "and the fact that she's forced to go between houses when she'd rather stay in her home with me." I bit my tongue, remembering my lawyer's advice to stay calm and collected. "Actually," the counsellor said, looking at her notes, "Emma mentioned feeling caught in the middle. She told me she feels pressured to report back everything that happens at her father's house, and that she gets in trouble if she says she had fun there. Sarah's face flushed. That's completely untrue. Emma must have misunderstood. Mrs. Reynolds, I've been doing this job for 15 years. Children don't typically misunderstand that kind of pressure. They feel it acutely. That meeting was a turning point. The school counsellor recommended family therapy, not just for Emma, but for all of us. Sarah couldn't refuse without looking uncooperative, so she agreed, though she insisted on choosing the therapist. I agreed, on the condition that the therapist have experience with high-conflict divorce and custody issues. Dr. Lisa Chen turned out to be my unexpected ally. An experienced family therapist, she quickly saw through Sarah's manipulations. In our first session, Sarah painted herself as the victim, me as the villain, and the children as traumatized by having to spend time with me. Dr. Chen listened patiently, then turned to Emma and Noah. What do you think about spending time with your dad? Both children glanced at Sarah before answering. Emma said, It's okay, I guess. Mum says we have to go even though we don't want to. And is that true? Dr. Chen asked gently. You don't want to go? Emma looked at the floor. Noah fidgeted with his shoelace. It's okay to be honest here, Dr. Chen assured them. No one will be upset. Noah spoke first, his voice small. I like playing video games with Dad, and he helps me with my science homework better than Mum does. Sarah shifted in her seat, and Noah immediately backtracked. But I miss Mum a lot when I'm there. Dr. Chen nodded, then suggested individual sessions with each family member. Sarah tried to object, but the therapist was firm. This is standard practice in high-conflict situations. It gives everyone a safe space to speak freely. Over the next few months, these therapy sessions became crucial. The children began to open up to Dr. Chen about the pressure they felt from Sarah, about how she questioned them intensely after every visit with me, about how she would cry and say they were betraying her if they reported having a good time at my place, about how she told them I didn't really want them, that I was only fighting for custody to hurt her and to avoid paying child support. Dr. Chen documented everything. With my permission, she also spoke to the school counsellor, who shared her observations of the children's behaviour and Emma's academic struggles. Together, they built a clear picture of parental alienation. Meanwhile, the financial situation was growing dire. Sarah was demanding more support, claiming the children needed private tutoring, which I later discovered wasn't happening, and therapy, which was court-ordered anyway. She'd also discovered various medical issues that required expensive treatments not covered by insurance. At a temporary orders hearing, Sarah's lawyer painted me as a father trying to shirk financial responsibility. Mr. Reynolds is consistently late with payments and argues about necessary expenses for the children, her lawyer claimed. He seems more concerned with his own financial comfort than his children's well-being. My lawyer presented bank statements showing every payment made on time, along with a spreadsheet of additional expenses I'd covered beyond the court-ordered support. He also pointed out that Sarah remained unemployed by choice, despite having a nursing degree and years of experience. The judge ordered a financial investigation, and Sarah was livid. Outside the courtroom, she cornered me in the hallway. You think you're so clever, she hissed, but it won't matter. I'll make sure they never believe you. You'll be paying child support until they're 30, and they'll grow up thinking their father abandoned them. This isn't about money, Sarah, I said quietly. It's about our children. It's about winning, she snapped. And I always win. I didn't argue. Instead, I took out my phone and stopped the recording app that had been running since before we left the courtroom. Sarah's eyes widened as she realized what I'd done. That's illegal, she stammered. Not in this state, I replied. One-party consent. She stormed off, but the damage was done. Her mask had slipped, and I had it on record. As the final custody hearing approached, I gathered my evidence. The detailed visitation log, text messages and emails showing Sarah's interference, recordings of her threats, Dr. Chen's reports, school records documenting the children's declining performance and increasing anxiety, and financial records showing how Sarah was misusing child support funds. My lawyer reviewed everything and looked at me with newfound respect. Most clients talk about gathering evidence, but you actually did it, systematically and thoroughly. This is the most comprehensive documentation of parental alienation I've seen in 20 years of practice. 3 days before the hearing, Sarah's lawyer reached out about a settlement. They proposed joint legal custody, but with Sarah maintaining primary physical custody. I would get every other weekend and 1 weeknight dinner, less than I already had under the temporary orders. They're testing the waters, my lawyer explained. They know their position is weakening, but they're hoping you'll cave to avoid the stress of a hearing. I'm done caving, I replied. The children deserve better than this. The morning of the hearing, I arrived early, dressed in my best suit, carrying a leather portfolio containing copies of all our evidence. Sarah arrived fashionably late, making a show of looking harried and overwhelmed, the struggling single mother act she'd perfected. Her lawyer went first, painting a picture of a devoted mother who'd sacrificed her career to care for traumatized children, while their father focused on his job and new life. They presented carefully selected text messages where I expressed frustration with the situation, trying to portray me as angry and unstable. Furthermore, her lawyer concluded, Mr. Reynolds has engaged in a campaign to alienate the children from their mother, bribing them with expensive gifts and activities while disparaging Mrs. Reynolds at every opportunity. I almost laughed at the projection. Almost. Then it was our turn. My lawyer started methodically building a timeline of the divorce and custody dispute. He presented the visitation log, showing dozens of thwarted attempts to see my children. He played recordings of Sarah making threats and admitting her real motivations. He submitted Dr. Chen's reports and called her as a witness. Dr. Chen's testimony was devastating to Sarah's case. As a neutral professional, her clinical assessment of parental alienation carried tremendous weight. She described how the children displayed classic signs of being caught in a loyalty conflict, how they used identical, unusual phrases when speaking about me, phrases that clearly originated with Sarah, and how their anxiety spiked before and after transitions. In my professional opinion, Dr. Chen concluded, the children are suffering significant emotional harm due to the pressure being placed on them to reject their father. This is not in their best interest developmentally or emotionally. The school counsellor testified next, describing Emma's academic decline and both children's social withdrawal. She recounted conversations where Emma admitted feeling like a spy in my home, afraid of getting in trouble if she didn't report back to her mother. Throughout these testimonies, I watched Sarah's face. At first, she maintained a mask of calm indignation, occasionally shaking her head in performative disbelief. But as the evidence mounted, her composure began to crack. By the time my lawyer submitted the financial investigation showing how she'd misused child support funds for personal expenses, including a vacation with a boyfriend the children had never met, she was visibly seething. The judge called a brief recess before my testimony. In the hallway, Sarah approached me, her lawyer trying unsuccessfully to hold her back. "You're destroying our family," she hissed. "Is that what you want?" "Our family was destroyed when you decided to use our children as weapons," I replied calmly. "All I want is for Emma and Noah to have two parents who love them without putting them in the middle." "They hate you," she spat. "They tell me all the time how much they hate being forced to see you." I didn't take the bait. "That's exactly the problem, Sarah. They shouldn't feel forced to love either of us." When court resumed, I took the stand. I spoke directly and honestly about my relationship with my children before the divorce, the systematic alienation I'd experienced since, and my efforts to maintain a positive relationship despite Sarah's interference. I submitted recordings of the children's gradually warming behavior during my parenting time, contrasted with their rehearsed coldness at transitions when Sarah was watching. The most powerful moment came when my lawyer played a recording from just 2 weeks earlier. In it, Noah was laughing as we built a model rocket together, then suddenly stopped and whispered, "Don't tell Mum I was having fun, okay? She gets really sad when I like being at your house." Sarah's lawyer objected to the recording, but the judge overruled, noting that proper notice of recordings had been filed with the court. In her cross-examination, Sarah's lawyer tried to portray me as obsessive for keeping such detailed records. "Isn't it true that you've been building a case against Mrs. Reynolds from the beginning, looking for any mistake or misstep to use against her?" "I've been documenting my experiences as a father being systematically cut out of his children's lives," I replied. "I didn't want to believe this was happening at first. I kept hoping Sarah would put the children's needs first. When it became clear that wasn't happening, yes, I started keeping records, because no one would have believed me otherwise." By the time closing arguments were made, the mood in the courtroom had shifted dramatically. Sarah sat rigid in her chair, her earlier performance of maternal concern replaced by barely contained fury. The judge took a day to review all the evidence before delivering his ruling. Those 24 hours were the longest of my life. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, could barely breathe thinking about what was at stake. When we returned to court, the judge didn't mince words. "This court has seen substantial evidence of parental alienation perpetrated by Mrs. Reynolds, the systematic interference with Mr. Reynolds' parenting time, the documented emotional manipulation of the children, and the misuse of child support funds all point to behavior that is not in the best interest of Emma and Noah Reynolds." Sarah's face drained of colour as the judge continued. "Therefore, this court awards joint legal and physical custody to both parents with a week-on, week-off schedule. Additionally, Mrs. Reynolds will be required to attend parenting classes specifically addressing parental alienation, and the children will continue therapy with Dr. Chen." The judge wasn't finished. Furthermore, all custody exchanges will take place at a supervised exchange center for the next 6 months to ensure compliance and to provide a neutral transition space for the children. Mrs. Reynolds is ordered to seek employment commensurate with her education and experience within 90 days, at which time child support will be recalculated based on both parents' incomes. He looked directly at Sarah. This court takes a very dim view of using children as pawns in divorce proceedings, Mrs. Reynolds. Should evidence of continued alienation arise, this court will not hesitate to revisit the custody arrangement. Sarah's composure finally broke. "This is outrageous," she shouted, rising from her seat. "He's turned everyone against me, including you." "Mrs. Reynolds," the judge said sternly, "control yourself or you'll be held in contempt." Her lawyer pulled her back into her seat, whispering urgently in her ear. As we left the courtroom, Sarah wouldn't look at me. Her lawyer hustled her away, probably afraid of what else she might say or do. I stood in the hallway, feeling not triumph, but relief, and sadness that it had come to this. The transition wasn't easy. Sarah fought the ruling, filing motion after motion, each one rejected by the court. The supervised exchanges were tense, with Sarah often arriving late or creating scenes. But with the structure in place and Dr. Chen's continued therapy, the children slowly began to relax. Emma was the first to thaw completely. During our 3rd week together under the new arrangement, she broke down crying while I was helping her with homework. "I'm sorry, Dad," she sobbed. "Mom said we had to hate you, or we were betraying her. I didn't know what to do." I held her as she cried. "You didn't do anything wrong, Emma. Adults put you in an impossible position, and that wasn't fair." "Mom still says mean things about you," she admitted. "But Dr. Chen says we don't have to pick sides. Dr. Chen is right. You can love both your mom and me. You don't have to choose." Noah took longer to fully trust again, but the breakthrough came when his science project, the one we'd worked on together during my parenting time, won first place at the school fair. He'd been afraid to tell Sarah I had helped, but when the teacher specifically commended the parent involvement, Noah looked at me with pride instead of guilt. "We did it, Dad," he said, high-fiving me in front of everyone, including Sarah. It's been 2 years since that custody hearing. There have been setbacks. Sarah occasionally slips into old patterns when she's feeling insecure or angry. But the supervised exchanges eventually ended, and we've established a workable co-parenting relationship. Not friendly, but functional. Sarah found a nursing job and now contributes to the children's expenses. She's dating someone new, which seems to have taken some of her focus off punishing me. I've started dating too, very carefully and with lots of consultation with Dr. Chen about how to introduce someone new to the children's lives. Emma and Noah are thriving again. Emma's grades recovered, and she's back to her confident self, joining the debate team and making new friends. Noah's anxiety has decreased significantly, and he no longer feels like he has to report back to either parent about what happens at the other's house. Last weekend, while helping Emma organise her room at my house, no longer Dad's house, but my room at Dad's, a subtle but important distinction, I found a framed photo I hadn't seen before. It was from years ago, before the divorce. Sarah, the kids, and me at the beach, all smiling. I started to ask Emma about it, wondering if it made her sad, but she spoke first. "I keep it because it reminds me that we were happy once, all together," she said. "But Dr. Chen says families change, and that's okay. Different doesn't have to mean bad." Out of the mouths of babes. I still have the leather portfolio with all the evidence. It sits on a high shelf in my closet, a reminder of how close I came to losing my children. I hope I never have to open it again, but its presence gives me peace, knowing that if I ever need to fight for them again, I can and will. But these days, I'm not fighting. I'm just being Dad, helping with homework, cheering at soccer games, making pancakes on Saturday mornings, and building a new normal with 2 amazing kids who are finally free to love both their parents without fear or guilt. And that's a victory worth all the pain it took to get here.